I hope you're never in a state of desperation this bad where you have to make choices like that. What a beautifully worded excuse. Um, that it wasn't done out of emotion or sexuality. It was done out of desperation and survival, as he used to like to say. Everything he did was always a survival tactic.
What's up, beautiful people? It's your favorite light, MB. Welcome to another episode of the Confidence Way podcast, where we are shining light on the darkness that is domestic violence and abuse. We got 3 goals: educate, empower, and encourage. We are here to educate anyone who does not understand the complexities and the dynamics of abusive relationships, or who might be in an abusive relationship and didn't know it was abusive. We are here to empower all of our survivors. Listen, you survived. Share your story without shame, fear, guilt, or judgment, because your story is going to empower others. And we are here to encourage anyone who is currently suffering in silence. You are not alone. You are not crazy. Abuse is not normal. Your feelings are valid, and get this: despite how it feels or looks in this present moment, you can survive. There is a way out, and there is support. Now let's go ahead and dive off in this thing. You know, we got to rise above these insecurities, release the burdens of shame and guilt, and revive the God-given power, purpose, and passion the confidence way. Because we about to light it up. Y'all, I want to welcome to the show Miss Mikayla. This strong, beautiful, amazing woman has a story to tell. Miss Mikayla. First of all, I got to hit my bing, 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 bing. Girl, how are you doing, sis?
Hey y'all. Man, I'm here. I am here, and quite frankly, at this point, that's more than good enough. I'm here. I am aware, I'm awake, I'm alive, and God is good. He is.
Talk that talk. Listen, now Mikayla is in New York, but I know y'all heard that, y'all. And you've never, that's so Southern and country. Like, I'm like, wait a minute, where'd that come from? That's us.
Okay. I get that a lot. It's funny. Like, I've had people ask me if I had any Southern influence in my family at all. And I'm like, no, this is just how a lot of us speak up here. It really is. I don't know. I can't explain it. It happens a lot.
Bananas. Well, Mikayla, girl, first of all, thank you. Thank you for this opportunity to have this conversation. And like we were talking a minute ago, we're just here in this space expressing freedom, the freedom to share our stories, the freedom to release the shame, the guilt, the regrets, and all of the bad decisions that we made, everything that has happened in our story of being in an abusive or violent relationship. There's a lot of freedom that comes when you're able to get on the other side, when you're able to start your healing journey, and when you're able to tap in who God created you to be. So thank you for taking the time out to share your story with us today.
Thank you for having me. I'm very excited to be here. I'm very, very excited that my story could even be an asset to one person. So that's amazing.
It is. It is. Y'all, let me tell y'all this. Mikayla got the vibes, okay? She's a whole vibe. So I need y'all, if you in the car, buckle up. I don't know where you are. You need to be sitting down, grab whatever you need to grab. She's a whole vibe.
Oh my
Sis,
gosh.
I got to start off with this. How many abusive relationships have you been in?
Unfortunately, several. But this one that we will reference today obviously is takes top spot. I have never been physically abused, by the grace of God, but mental, emotional, financial, big time. So several in my youth that were more obvious, but my big adult ones, far more devious. And like I said, obviously this one takes the top spot. So it's had the biggest effect on the second half of my 20s and the beginning of my 30s.
So with you saying several, did you grow up around like anything that was abusive, uncomfortable, or anything like that? Or did you just find yourself in that space?
So my parents divorced when I was 7. And my dad was gone a lot in the military. He served in the in Army Civil Affairs. So he missed a lot of time, and I was with my mother a lot. My mother also struggles with mental illness. So I was kind of, as you discover through therapy, you discover a lot of these roles that you took on in your childhood time. I was pushed into a caretaker role very early. So taking care of others, being understanding of their struggles, their trauma, their internal wounds that they wear, was something that just came naturally. It was just, I always did. I was always overly compassionate, overly understanding. I gave people chance after chance after chance because I was taught, when you love someone, even if they say horrible things or they don't respect your boundaries, or they don't give you proper space, etc., you should still love them anyways. So there is a lot to unpack in that aspect, but seeing actual abuse in real time, no, I was very fortunate that that never happened in my childhood, but the caretaker piece definitely came into play later, big time.
Okay. And she said something really important. And I think that a lot of people carry this on their back with them when they're involved in any relationship, whether it be family, whether it be significant other, whether it be friendship, whether it be at work. A lot of people have this idea that you're supposed to love people through everything.
Mm-hmm.
But what we're missing is I can love you from a distance and still protect myself.
Correct.
We think that love is being in the trenches, and God didn't create us to be in the trenches with everybody, because some folks dig in their own trenches. Then we dive off in there like grabbing the shovel, and we getting hit with the shovel that they swinging.
Say
So,
that again.
girl,
Say that again. Say
like,
that again.
we have to be willing and vulnerable to be in these open relationships with other people, but we also have to set boundaries, and we also have to understand that our love for ourselves should be our number one priority if we're ever going to be able to love people in a healthy way, that they need to be loved.
Absolutely.
And the second thing you said, like, triggered something in me. Everybody deserves a second chance. I say this quite often. Everybody deserves a second chance, but you don't got to be the person to give it to them.
That is powerful.
So
and it's true. It
let
is.
y'all let that marinate in your mental for a minute, because
Mm-hmm.
God darn it.
Mm-hmm.
That's not our job all the time.
Sure enough, ain't. Mm-mm.
It is not our job all the time. Okay, so we talking about homeboy.
Yes.
In this adult's life.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
How did y'all meet, and what attracted you to him when y'all did meet?
See, you're gonna make me reminisce on the good parts.
But we got you though. Hold on, really 1 second, because that was a really good point. Y'all, we have to reminisce on the good part, because people don't understand. People who've never been in any kind of abusive relationship don't understand that it's not always all bad.
No, never. You wouldn't stay.
Or you wouldn't stay, and you wouldn't have
Never
gotten there in
stay.
the first place.
Correct. There has to be a good period, or you would never get roped in that deep. So so I met him when I was 26 and he was 43. So we first relationship I've ever been in with an age gap that size, so 17 years between us. First time I had ever been with someone that much older, and I said to myself, I'm tired of dealing with these young little boys that are too immature. They don't possess the emotional maturity I need. They're not where I need to be in life, where I'm at. Because at 26, I already had my own home, my own career, taking care of my four-legged child over here, and very set in my pathway. So I had gone to school already. I'd gotten my master's. I'd done everything that I wanted to do. And so the family piece was really the only piece that was missing. And I thought, you know what? You've never gone older. Like, give it a shot. And so we met on a dating app, actually. And actually, for the life of me, I can't remember which one, but that's really kind of irrelevant. So his profile, he didn't have a ton of pictures, but he had most perfect jaw structure you ever want to see in your life. Beautiful caramel skin, salt and pepper hair, just the epitome of what every woman thinks of like just a banging stylish older dude, just gorgeous. And 6'3", big, muscular, very clean cut, great teeth, So I said, oh my God, like he wants to talk to me. And funny enough, in the beginning, he couldn't believe that somebody as young as me wanted to talk to him. So we meet for the first time. This man stood up when I came to the table, waited for me to sit down. Epitome of old school manners and old school romance. Totally not used to that. Totally not used to that. And so I was like, wow, this is different. I didn't even think men like this still existed. And we hit it off immediately. Immediately. He was adorable, exceptionally polite, very well mannered, very smart. I could tell immediately he was very, very smart. Um, and that date wound up lasting like 8 hours. So yeah. And nothing physical at all. Nothing physical at all other than a kiss. That was it. So I was hooked quick. And like I said, just like the looks help, right? Like big 6'3". Just he's a personal trainer, so in great shape. And so I was hooked very fast. And from there, we just kept talking, and we were pretty much inseparable from that point forward. And the age difference really kind of didn't even matter at that point. Because if you saw him, you would never believe that he was 43. You'd never believe he was 43. He had a very young spirit about him. So, and he was a business owner as well. So that was another thing that I was like, wow, that's amazing. Like he's very motivated. He's very self-driven. Not used to that, right? So checking all the boxes. All the good ones.
That's a lot of good.
Yes, you would
That's
think.
a whole lot of good. Tall, dark, handsome, strong, smart, intelligent, polite. How can you not fall for someone like that who is able to communicate with you effectively and entertainingly for 8 hours straight?
Yeah. And he was a dad as well. And so me being a teacher, having such an exceptional, huge love for children, him being a dad just sent me over the moon. So that was a factor as well. And I have a feeling that he could probably smell that on me from jump. So
okay, so y'all were basically inseparable from the first date.
Pretty much.
Did y'all ever get to a point where you're like, okay, it's quote unquote official, or is one of those things that just kind of merged into official status?
It just kind of merged into it. Because he's older, he wasn't necessarily sure, understandably so, where it was going to go with somebody that much younger than him. And he didn't know if it was going to become something serious. But obviously, in my eyes, that's automatically where it was going because I've always been a serial monogamist and a serial romanticist. So with him, I was like, this is everything. What else do I need? So the first 2 months, it just was kind of a natural, organic flow of we're just going to keep seeing each other and see how we merge and how we mesh and how our spirits connect and go from there. And it just kept getting better. So it happened pretty quick.
It kept getting better. Mm-hmm. So how far in past the 2-month mark did you feel like, now that you're looking back on it, did you feel like you saw signs of, I should have paused right there and recognized this?
It took a strong 8 to 9 months before I really started to see questionable behaviors and things that seemed shady and off. First big one was at 8 months when he told me that he could not biologically give me children. And that was such a big story to keep because it turned out he had had a vasectomy after his daughter and had chosen that he was never going to have kids again. He regretted it because he knew there was a possibility that someday he could potentially want another child. But the fact that you waited 8 months to tell me, knowing that I have no children, and that's something that I very much value and want, and for you to keep that from me for 8 months. And of course, when he told me, he put on this big song and dance of, I didn't want to see the disappointment on your face, and I couldn't stand the idea of hurting you that bad, because I thought that would be the end right there, that I couldn't give you a baby. And so, and of course his hands are shaking while he's telling me this, and whatever. But by that point, he had me hook, line, and sinker. And so I just said, you know what? There is so much medical technology out there nowadays. Families are made in different, unconventional ways every day. We'll figure it out. And I also thought that him sharing something that was that difficult and me immediately being forgiving was just going to bring us closer, And so that really was probably the first turning point, that I should have been like, you had no business keeping something that huge from me.
So based off what you just said, it sounds like y'all had conversations about starting a family or having children earlier on.
Absolutely.
So what did those look like? If you bringing up, yeah, of course I want to have kids one day. Mm-hmm. What was his response to those kind of conversations?
He was never over the top about it, so I can't sit there and say that like he was feeding it. He kept it within a reasonable level. He would happily like play along with anything that I had to say and talk about what it could be like for us to raise a child together. But you could always tell that there was a lot of hesitancy behind his statements. And I always just assumed it was because he was older and because he was trying to be rational and be like, okay, pump the brakes. Like, let's not put the carriage before the horse type deal. But then I found out why. So, but like I said, because he handled it with so much shame, if you will, and feeling badly that he had kept it from me, I kept going.
So looking back on that now, do you feel like that was a manipulative play on his part?
I do. Because looking back now, that man was never going to have a child with me in any way, shape, or form. And I should have known better. And there were so many cues along the way, and times where he literally spelled it out right to my face. And I didn't want to hear it. Because I'm like, no, the love that we have is too great. Like, we'll figure it out. Like every woman who hopelessly loves a man wants to feel and do.
So the first flag is yo, sis, I can't have kids, but I ain't gonna let you know, but I'm gonna let you know now. And I need you to feel bad for me because I can't do this and I kept it from you. So okay, and then you forgive him. And then y'all go on for another couple of months, good times, or did more flags just start falling out of the sky once you kind of kept that one in the back pocket?
A lot of more really great times, but fights started to become much more intense. His favorite tactic was utilizing the silent treatment on me. And knowing that I had abandonment issues from my own childhood and previous relationships, he definitely took advantage of that, because he knew that the one thing I always told him was, don't leave me in the middle of a fight and don't hang up on me and refuse to talk to me. Right. And he would do that often. So he would refuse to speak to me for, at first it would be like 6-7 hours. Then it turned into overnight. Then it turned into, there was one blowout that was so bad that he didn't speak to me for almost 36 hours. And I was losing my mind. I really thought I was going to go crazy. Like, was to the point where I was driving around the city looking for him because I couldn't believe he had gone that long without speaking to me. And he would tell me it was because I was acting crazy and I was pushing everything too hard and I wasn't listening. And it was always something I was doing that was deserving of that kind of silent treatment, knowing that that was absolutely just shredding me to pieces. He knew it. And then he would make it a point that when he would finally speak to me again, there would always be this big, huge conversation. And he would frighten me because I would feel like, you didn't speak to me for this long. Is the relationship over? Like, where do we go from here? And like, I don't think people realize, like, when narcissists give you the silent treatment, it's one of the most, like, painful, devious things you can do, because you are leaving that person to completely spiral in their own thoughts. And you know them well enough at that point, usually, to know what they're thinking and the way that it is eating them alive, and that you are on their brain 24/7, 365. But that's what narcissists thrive off of. And so it makes a lot of sense. Um, so, the silent treatments got longer, the fights, name calling started. That happened a couple times. That I was shocked, because I couldn't believe that somebody who had always been as demure and romantic and polite as he was, calling me a bitch, and just saying all that type of stuff. And this was where, like, the dialogue started to come out of. He was always telling me I was selfish, I was spoiled, um, I was a brat, I wanted things my way, and when I didn't get my way, this was why I would act the way I would act. And that I don't care about anybody's feelings but my own, when all I was trying to do was be heard. And so that's the downward trickle of how it starts. And from there, um, fights just got more intense. I will say, he wouldn't yell often. That was rare. But when he did yell, he yelled big time. And he's a big 6'3" dude, and I'm 5'7", and he's a big, hulking, broad man standing over top of me, or standing, right in my face. And he's loud, and he's intimidating. I have no problem, as the woman that I am, saying that he definitely used to intimidate me. He's probably the only man on the planet that I could actually say, other than my own father, that ever made me feel intimidated or scared.
And you said, when you were saying that he would give you the silent treatment because he felt like you were forcing him or pressuring him into having a conversation. Did y'all ever talk about his past relationships or how he grew up as a child? And did he experience any of this that you were aware of?
Oh God, yes. His childhood and his previous relationships were a constant topic of conversation. So he was married before me. He was married for 12 years. His marriage, of course, now remember, these are all one-sided stories. What I like to say I want to preface this by saying, what I like to tell any individual, if your partner is consistently blaming other women or other men for every single reason why they have ever become single, run from them. Run from them. Because when you come across a person that tells you every single other partner was at fault for why they are here, run far away. Because lack of accountability is mm-mm. So he was married for 12 years before me, which is where both his children came from. And he talked about how the marriage was exceptionally abusive. His ex was a horrendous human being who used to put her hands on him, and just did all kinds of horrible, horrible, horrible stuff. His long-term relationships, both before and after his marriages, most were either physically, mentally, or emotionally abusive. And he also had a lot of childhood trauma as well. So there were pieces that had to do with his parents. There were pieces that had to do with him being abused. So he had a lot of trauma. He had a lot of baggage. And once again, me being in the profession that I'm in, I am a special education teacher. My specialty is in trauma treatment. And so I do this every day, and so when you encounter it in your actual real life, your first instinct is, we got to fix this. I have to figure out how I'm going to help him fix this, right? Because this is what women do. This is what we're taught to do, right? Be the caretaker, be the nurturer, hear him out, cradle him, love him through it. Like, because we're always told that we don't give men space to be vulnerable and open and to share their feelings, and we don't comfort them enough, and we don't do this, that, and the third. and especially men that have gone through any type of cultural, racial, or religious trauma, which he has all of, it's even more critically important for you as a partner to support them through it. And so he always had a trauma excuse in my book, because every bad action that he had came with a story or a cause behind it. And so he was very artistic in the way that he would paint pathways for everything to always connect and to always have an excuse. And this is why it's dangerous as well, that the most dangerous narcissists are the ones that are incredibly smart, because they're not all smart. They're not all smart. The ones that are unbelievably smart, treacherous, the most devious people you will ever meet in your life, because their ability to manipulate and their ability to look you in the face with dead eye contact and tell you whatever they have to tell you to get to where they need to get is boundless.
They are exceptional at doing that.
It's frightening. It's terrifying. Very terrifying.
Well trained at doing that.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So with all of the trauma that he's been through, had y'all ever discussed therapy? Did he ever go to therapy to actually address it and work on his own healing?
So he had been to therapy before, and it had proven to be ineffective for him. For what real reasons, I'll probably never know. Most likely he wasn't actually being honest with whoever his provider was. But in the time that we were together, in the 4 years that we were together, he attempted to go back to therapy 3 times. And his longest successful stint was 6 months.
And we're
so
3 times with 3 different therapists?
Correct. So in his longest stint, he went for 6 months, and he was going bi-weekly for 6 months faithfully. And I do know that he actually was not lying about that, because I did know where his provider's office was located. So that part he was telling the truth about. So he did try, if we can call it that. He did try. And he was making some headway with not only acknowledging his childhood trauma and his adult trauma, but understanding how that affects him today. But there would always be a reason why he would stop going. There was always a reason why, the therapist started to make him feel like a number, or there was just always a reason why therapy would stop.
Was that the reason for the one that he was most quote unquote successful at, the 6 months? Was that his reason? He felt like he was a number? Or
yeah, he started to feel like he was being treated like a number, and that the attitude of his provider was changing, and that she was becoming too busy for him, and it made him feel uncomfortable to be vulnerable, and therefore he no longer wanted to go.
Let me tell y'all something. Being vulnerable is not for the weak. It sure is not. Mm-mm. But if you want to operate in the best version of yourself, you've got to have these vulnerable conversations, especially with someone who is trained and educated and skilled on helping you navigate the emotions that have been suppressed for however many years you've suppressed them. You've got to get to that point. Healing doesn't happen from the surface. It happens by digging deep. Like if you get cut, and the only thing that heals is the surface, like the skin, and all the stuff underneath that doesn't heal, you got problems. Mm-hmm. Like your body's going to have problems. That's why you got white blood cells. We ain't going to go into all that, but that's what trauma is. It's a lot of unhealed things that have been buried underneath the surface. And then we try to walk around here on the top of this earth like everything's all hunky-dory, and it's not. And we pour our pain onto people who didn't deserve it because we didn't choose to heal.
Yep. What I like to tell, the metaphor that I like to use, especially with my students at school, is if you choose not to stop a bleeding wound, you're going to bleed on every person around you until there is nothing left and everybody is covered. Right. And I should add as well that this is something that I would certainly never take away from him in terms of his struggle and the way that he functions. He's also a sickle cell survivor as well. So his existence has been difficult and traumatic from jump. Um, and he survived multiple fatal attacks, um, near fatal, I should say. And so the disorder has certainly taken a beating on his body, his mind, the way that he sees the world, his perception of his relationships, and the amount of sympathy and empathy that he feels he deserves. And like I said, that piece I would certainly never take away from him, because I would never wish his disorder on anybody. It's a nightmare. And it is not, it's a disease that's not highlighted enough and not talked about enough, of how treacherous it actually is, especially when you are a partner and you have absolutely no way to help them. So like this mix of this huge mixed bag of trauma that he's got going on really just set him up for no shot of success with emotional well-being.
Do you feel that because of all of the trauma, because I imagine all of the trauma that he'd been through was gradually unearthed as the relationship continued to grow? He ain't just dump it all on you a
No,
couple months.
there were things that even in the last year that we were together that I didn't know until he shared. And unfortunately, through therapy, he had a lot of doors that were busted back open that he didn't even realize were closed. Um, and so there was always more buckets being poured into the pool.
Do you think that the more trauma you found out about, the more you felt you had to really endure what you were enduring, because his journey to this point might have been so difficult that
Mm-hmm.
you didn't want to add to it? Like, were you taking on burdens, do you feel, because of the trauma that he hadn't healed from?
Oh, 100%. 100%. Because um, if you look back at, and I do this now even sometimes, if you look at the photos of me in the thick of our relationship and what I look like now, two completely different people, truly. You can see it in my face, you can see it in the way that I smile, you can see it in the way that I stand. um and it's crazy because after I left and I had been away for a good couple months, um I can't tell you how many people that really knew me said, "My God, you look great. Like you're glowing. Like, oh my gosh, what are you doing? Like you lost weight. Like what? Like whatever." And I did. I lost weight. After I left, and it was just such a heavy realization to realize not only were you taking this on mentally and emotionally, you were taking this on physically, to the point where people could see it after you left. And um no, I most certainly was not taking care of myself by any means, losing sleep all the time because I was either fighting with him or worrying about him or staying up with him, or um especially when it would be a particularly rough realization that he had had in therapy, or it would be something that would come out when we would fight. Um, yeah, I was not mentally, emotionally, physically healthy at all. I was taking it on as if I was him, because I just so badly wanted to be that person to help him carry the burden, because the burden was so heavy. And he was older, he's already struggling with a medical condition, he has a business to run, he's got so much to worry about. How can I possibly not support him you know
And that's the thing with people who have been in relationships and they're the person that's being abused. It's
hmm
not always that you don't really understand you're valuable or you don't see your worth. A lot of times is you have so much empathy and compassion and sympathy for the person that you're with, and you see the potential in them,
hmm
that you're trying to help in whatever way you can carry as much weight of theirs that they really should be carrying on their own, to help them get to that potential. Because if
hmm
you don't, then you think you're questioning whether or not you're a good partner.
right.
Why am I here if I'm not going to help you carry this burden? And we've got to release that. We have to be able to understand that love isn't what we hope for. Love is the action of what we see. And if we're seeing anything that doesn't fall under the category of what love is, we should just know this ain't me. I need to let you go. Get yourself together before you damage me. So you
Yep.
mentioned that you guys weren't um physically going at it. So what would an argument, besides like the yelling and things, how did arguments affect you mentally and emotionally for you to consider it abuse?
He did an incredible job of making me feel small all the time. There was always something. He was an incredible critiquer and a nitpicker, and it just got worse over time. There was always something that I was failing at, something that I was not doing enough of, something that I was not giving him enough of. He always questioned me of not being honest enough. There was always something I wasn't telling him, something I was hiding from him. Um, me not being vulnerable enough, which is hysterical to me in hindsight, because that man knows more about me than probably the only other person on this planet that knows that amount of information about me is my best friend, and she's known me for 25 years. So he knows anything and everything there is to know about me, including about my family, my upbringing, every single relationship I've ever been in. There is nothing that I hid from that man. And I've never been more vulnerable or soft than when I was with him, and submissive. And I hate to use that word, because that word should be used in such a beautiful context when a man truly loves you properly. But unfortunately, in this situation, it was not the good kind of submission. It was the ugly kind. And looking back now as well, the age difference piece also started to come into play. That it was always a ability to say, well, you're just not experienced enough, or you haven't been there yet, or you can't possibly understand, you haven't gotten there yet, you're just being young and dumb, like you're being incredibly immature, you're not emotionally aware enough. Always something that had to do with my age, always something that had to do with my lack of life experience. um, Always something that I was failing to understand and that I wasn't equipped to argue about. And sitting there thinking about it after the fact, I realized that my younger age bracket was a very easy way for him, especially knowing how dire I was for a family, to get that chapter of my life started. You're in your late 20s, early 30s as a woman. That's the part of life that you're ready for, especially when you've done the career, the house, that you've got everything else set up like I did. That's the only piece that's missing, and so he knew that from jump. And then my age on top of it. And it was the opportunity to mold and groom and shape and turn me into precisely what he needed and wanted me to be. Mm-hmm.
Girl, hold on, y'all. Let's take a moment. Let's take a moment and acknowledge what's happening here. Okay, I have to go back to the submission, because you touched on it, and you expressed it, and so beautifully, that there is two ways to use this word. And I don't think we should ever hate to use the word, but we have to acknowledge that, number one, everybody ain't meant to be submitted to, because they ain't submitting to anybody. You can't expect someone to submit to you if you're not submitted to God, or if you can't submit to a counselor or authority if you have this thing in you. So what would you say, because you were saying the two types of submission, how would you define a healthy submission versus an unhealthy submission based off of your experiences?
Submission between a man and a woman comes with incredible amounts of respect and trust. In a abusive relationship, that illusion is given with control and just breaking you down to build you up type deal. And they mask that as trying to make you better. And it's not. It's not making you better. It's making you into precisely what they desire you to be for their own selfish reasons. And so I still, even after everything that I have been through, I still absolutely believe in being submissive to a man that is deserving of that, because that is a privilege and that is an honor. And if a woman like me is submissive to you, you better handle that with exceptional amounts of care, because it is rare. I don't submit to anybody. I wasn't raised that way. So for
Wow.
me to have submitted to him as much as I did, I know how deep in the bottom of the ocean I was.
Yeah. And you said something really, really important. You said that they're not necessarily building you up to be better, they're building you up to be who they want you to be. And that's what narcissists abuse, any kind of abuse in a relationship with someone who's supposed to be your partner, someone who's supposed to be able to respect you and receive respect in return. Anytime that they're trying to change you into who they want you to be via emotional manipulation, they're going to wear you down. The relationship gets exhausting for the person who's being abused. It's like the abuser has all the energy in the world and they're so patient because they're like, I just got to keep tapping at this rock and I'm gonna get a hole in it. And they just keep going and keep going. And they always have the energy to keep you up at night. They always have the energy to have an argument. They always have the energy to tell you that you're never going to be, well, they won't tell you you'll never be good enough. In my case, it wasn't that I was ever told I would never be good enough, but I was told that, like you said, you just feel like you can't do anything right.
Right.
Even when you do it exactly how you feel like they expressed they wanted it, you can't do anything right. And so I wanted to pause on that. If there's anybody who's listening, who's in a relationship and you're questioning whether or not this relationship is healthy, if you have to question if the relationship is healthy, it's probably some flags that you've missed.
Right. Right.
So be on alert with that. Be on alert with people who are trying to make you better, but their version of better is really the version that serves them best.
Correct.
And they don't let you grow in your lane. They want you to grow in whatever thing they're putting you in. So I wanted to touch on that because you brought it up. And I think that's very, very, very important. And you were in this relationship for 4 years. You said you had your career, you had your own house. Did y'all ever live together at any time?
We did not. And quite frankly, that was by the grace of God. So he, once again, that tied into his relationship trauma of being kicked out of multiple houses and this, that, and the third. And once again, that's another thing that I'm going to put out there into the universe. If every story that your partner tells you ends with them getting kicked out of somebody's residence, there's probably another side to that story. There is probably another side to that story. And unfortunately, you'll probably never get it. But pay attention. So he was very gun shy about living together. And basically, we had established that when I went to purchase a larger home, that would be the home that we would share together. But that point never came. And like I said, that was a universal gift, that we did not live together, because that would have been an even bigger nightmare. So thankfully we did not share finances. We did not share a living space. And that made it much easier to cut clean in the end. And so that was a blessing for me.
Big blessing.
Mm-hmm.
But you said y'all had, where was the decision to get a larger home, was that a conversation that y'all were both having for the hope for the future, or was this, I already plan on getting a larger home and if I do, you're welcome to come? How did that go?
The second one.
Okay.
So I've been in my house for 7 years, and I had always said that when I did go into administration, which is my intention with my career path, and I did have a larger salary, that my ambition was to go into a larger house to obviously plan for a family in that next chapter of my life. And that obviously I wanted him to be a part of that decision. I wanted him to be a part of, that living space and have that be our home. So yeah, that was a consistent topic of conversation for sure.
Did he have his own home? Was he living in a rental property, an apartment?
He was living in a half house for the majority of our relationship. So he was living in a half house rental. I would spend typically 2 nights a week over there, and then he would spend 1 or 2 nights a week over here.
Okay.
Because he was an entrepreneur, and so his hours were pretty wild. Or at least I thought. And so the hours that he would run would be pretty extreme. So 9 times out of 10 with his illness, and then the hours that he would run on top of it, again, I was always sympathetic to the fact that he was tired a lot. And so I would make the effort to go over there more than he would come over here. But it was a somewhat okay balance in that aspect. But I definitely spent more time over there than he spent over here, for sure.
Nah, I can't let you just roll over that speed bump of the "or so I thought" comment.
I knew you weren't gonna. I knew you weren't gonna.
I wasn't gonna let that pass. Come on,
yeah.
Sis. What? Or so you thought? Okay, now we gotta unearth this. What happened? What's going on?
So he, like I said, he's a personal trainer and he owns his own fitness facility. And so he would regularly, from the time I met him forward, would work 12 and 14-hour days. So I was used to that. That was normal. That was just how his day functioned. There were specific times a day where he would check in with me. So it was tough, but I knew what I signed on for, so I wasn't going to punish him for being busy. And he was pretty decent about phone calls, so I can't necessarily fault him for that. He did well to check in at times. But why I say so I thought is because I found out in the last year that we were together in the most grotesque of ways, that he had been sleeping with one of his business partners for the last 9 months to keep his business afloat. And the only reason that I found out, the only reason I found out is because he went into the hospital, had a near fatal sickle cell attack, almost died. And this woman showed up to visit him, which was normal because I knew her. We had talked many a time. She was a part of his business. They were together every day. It made sense to me for her to visit him, right? And she asked me, and just once again, please, when you feel something in your gut, doesn't matter who you are, when you feel something in your gut about your partner and their interaction with somebody else, please don't ever ignore it. Women especially, you are not crazy. You're not crazy. You never are. You never are. Women's intuition exists for a reason. It's a gift and a curse. It really is. So I brought him in. She came into the waiting room to visit him. This is about 2 days after he had been hospitalized. And she came to visit him and she asked me if I was the one that had brought him into the hospital. And I said, yeah, it happened in the middle of the night. We were in bed, right? We go into his room and I watch her go and put her hand on his leg and kiss his forehead. Now, a lot of people in that situation with your partner being that drastically ill, you're just like, you try so hard to be like, nope, she's just trying to be comforting. There's no way. There's no way. Right? And then his medical team comes in, asks who everybody in the room is. She proceeds to introduce herself as his girlfriend. Now I'm looking around like, am I being punked? Is this a joke? Hold on. Wait. I'm sorry. Last I checked, I'm the one that's been with him for the last 3.5 years. I'm the one that's been going with him to see his children. And I'm the one that's been sharing family holidays with him every year for the last 3.5 years. And I'm so confused. I'm so confused. Right. And so at a point where everybody had left and I was sitting on his bed with him and I said, you going to tell me there's a reasonable explanation for that? Now, naturally, this man has tubes in his nose, in his arms, whatever. I can't push for a really worthy conversation, right?
Hold on. Wait a second. So when the nursing staff and doctors come in,
Mm-hmm.
And homegirl steps up to the plate.
Mm-hmm.
Is homeboy conscious at this time? Like
Oh yeah.
alert?
Oh yeah. Barely, but yes, he knew. And he took one look at me and yeah, he knew what was up. Mm-hmm. Yep. And what was funny was he texted me in that moment and said, basically congratulated me for not reacting because he's like, she's where the money's at. Okay. So fast forward, naturally, again, I can't get a conversation out of him right now with the condition that he's in. So he comes home. He's a mess. He's lost 25 pounds in 2 weeks. Yep. So he's in really bad condition. I'm scared, terrified, scared to even touch him because he's in such fragile condition. I had just watched this man have a central line put in his neck, be on 90% oxygen for, I mean, it was terrifying. It's petrifying. I've never been more afraid in my life. And this story of him having slept with her came out because 48 hours after he had been released out of the hospital, this woman came pounding down on his door at 7 a.m. because she saw my car in the parking lot of his apartment. Okay. Pounding, pounding, pounding. I looked at him and he says, she thinks I'm in here. Insert word here, you. Right? I said, excuse me? Last I checked, I'm your girlfriend. I'm confused. And I go, I had to take a pause because I'm like, all right, Mikayla, you got no choice but to accept it now. I said, tell me that you have been sleeping with this woman. Tell me. And he said, yeah. I said, you unimaginable bastard. For 9 months right under my nose. And the only reason was to keep his bills paid because he couldn't pay them. So she was keeping his business alive. Mm-hmm.
How long had they been business partners?
About a year and a half, 2 years roughly. Mm-hmm.
And had you met her prior to?
Oh yes, yep, many times.
Had you met her before the 9 months started?
Many times.
And did you ever pick up anything before anything started going down with them physically? Did you ever pick up any strange vibes from her, or did it feel
from her? And I told him that. And I told him that the gifts that she would give him around holiday times were inappropriate and they cost way too much for someone that is just working alongside you. And I'm going to get fresh, y'all. Sorry. You don't buy a $350 massage gun for a man that you're not. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. You don't do that, especially when you're married. Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah. Mikayla.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Hold up.
Yep. I'm telling you, if it wasn't me, it would be like the best TV drama you ever saw in your life. If it wasn't my life, it would be like, wow, this is juicy. This is, like this would be prime time daytime television.
Yep. Yeah, I'm trying to catch myself here and collect all the pieces.
I understand.
Okay. Okay, so you're 48 hours after you bring him back to his house from the hospital.
Yep.
She just roaming through his parking lot.
Yep. Pounding down his door at 7 a.m.
Sees your car and comes knocking on the door. Is she yelling through the door, or is she just steady knocking and waiting for somebody to open it?
Nope, she's just steady pounding on the door, waiting for him to come down and open it up. And he told me to be quiet. That was the funny part.
So he goes down, but before he does, he says, don't say anything, just be quiet.
Just let me handle it. Yep. Just let me deal with it.
Could you hear the conversation being had?
Oh, no, there was no conversation. We were sitting right in the living room and she's just pounding, and he's like, just wait for it to go away. and then I'll tell you everything. And he did, to my knowledge.
So how long she went away after? Did he go to the door?
Nope.
He never answered the door.
Nope.
So she just kept knocking, and then she was like, okay, well, he's not coming. I
Gave up.
imagine
Yep.
she started blowing his phone up.
Absolutely.
And he wouldn't answer the phone.
Nope. Because I was busy cussing him out in 10 different languages. So, yeah. Quite frankly, he's lucky that nothing went flying in his direction. Because it should have. Yeah.
That's bananas.
And I would like to add as well, to put the cherry on top of that whole thing, that in that 9 months that they were sleeping together, I had paid for us to go on a $5,000 trip to the Bahamas. And it was actively happening while we were on that trip.
Now you got to unwrap that. What do you mean it was actively happening while you were on that trip?
Meaning they were continuing to make the ambition that he was going to continue sleeping with her while we were on that trip. It's not like it had stopped. Like it was still continuing.
Because they're business partners. So naturally, just because you're on a week vacation, I can't stop communicating with my business partner, right?
Yep.
But that was just the story front.
Mm-hmm.
Because the actual communication. So was she just funding his business, or did she actually work in the business as well?
So she started out as a client, which is the funny part. She started out as a client. She turned into a trainer, and then a trainer basically turned into a manager. And she had her own family business that she was running, which is where the money came from, because she had a lot stocked away, saved away. And the sad part is he had no actual emotional feelings for this woman. Shocker. She was head over heels in love with him.
And homegirl is married.
Yep. Miserable marriage. Miserable marriage. Not that that's an excuse. Miserable marriage with a 12-year-old son. Yep. And the best part was me being the masochist that I was. I asked, where the hell were y'all at during all of these encounters? Because let me find out that you were bringing her here. You said, no, we were always at her house. I said, boy, I sure hope her son wasn't home. Or her husband. So she's shameless too. So I can't necessarily like say she has no blame in it, because you have a whole family unit at home. I don't care if you're miserable or not. Get divorced. Get divorced. And like I said, the saddest part was she was head over heels, hopelessly in love with him.
That's really sad.
Yep. Very.
But that, and again, is a sign like she got a whole lot of stuff she's got to deal with herself for her to give herself the space to fall in love with someone when she's in her own relationship and he's in his own relationship.
Well, you know, in true narcissistic fashion, if she told him she loved him, he of course said it back, because the money wouldn't have kept flowing if he didn't.
That's bananas. So y'all go through this.
Yep.
Is this the last year that y'all are together? This happens the last year that y'all are together?
Yes.
Was that the final straw, or did you like?
So I obviously had to sit with it and determine, are you truly going to forgive this man for something this heinous? Like, because the conversation that followed that morning after I found out, he basically went on this whole monologue of, I realize the monster that I am, and you're just not, you don't even understand who I actually am, and the man that you sleep beside, and what I'm capable of. And I realize now the evil things I could do, and, you know, the level of manipulation I'm capable of, and it's dangerous and it's harmful, and just all this crap. And, you know, I'm not even crying at this point. I'm furious, like to the point where I can't even like sit still, you know, because with everything that I had dedicated to that man in the last 3.5 years, the thousands of dollars, the vacations, the gas, showering him with just unconditional love, with gifts, with, fighting tooth and nail with my family to defend him every time he would screw up. And for him to do this right under my nose. And then to know when we were on that dream vacation what you were doing, and to still not tell me, and then to come home and have this be the nightmare. And so, of course, he poured on the, if you leave me, I understand. You have every right to walk away, blah, blah, blah. And just all this, I'm not a good person stuff. And I thought, once again, because of the nature of his childhood trauma, that I could somehow rationalize in my head why sex was so meaningless, or could be so meaningless for him. Because this is the population of children that I work with every day. This is something that I see all the time. And I understand that sex having absolutely no meaning is a very common response to that type of trauma. And so being in this profession, once again, is both a blessing and a curse, because you give excuses and actual scientific research behind something that has no business having it. And so I said, I'm going to try to get past this. But I expect, what I said to him, first of all, you need to make it very clear to her that this is going to stop and that there will be no more, and to avoid as much time with her in the studio as possible. And so, of course, he had to make some moves, because he wouldn't have gotten me to stay any other way, because I stayed for an additional 6 months after the fact. And which is so unbelievable to me in retrospect now, that he moved his schedule around. So basically they would never be in the same time slot. He would see her very little. He made sure that his phone was kind of always in a place where I could see it, so that if she were to call, I would see it, And he would also talk to me openly. If there were conversations between the two of them, he would tell me, his version, but he would tell me. And I realized I wasn't ever going to be able to fully get past it. I was never going to be able to fully get past it. There are some marriages that I know have gotten past affairs. God bless them. I don't know how you do it. You got to really love each other and there's got to be a whole lot of trust and respect there to get past something like that. So obviously with a narcissist, that's impossible. But I was gung-ho that I was going to try to get past it. And once again, made every excuse for him in the world that was trauma linked. And in the end, I just started to become as spiteful as him, because I wanted him to feel the hurt that I felt. And I never cheated back by any means. I've never cheated on anybody in my life, but I started to just find little mental ways that I could toy with him, because I was just so fed up with his behavior, on top of the everyday stuff of just getting nitpicked and criticized and whatever. And it's like this fire started that I just couldn't put out. I was angry all the time. And like I said, I was finding little mental, emotional ways to just poke at him, to say, you know what, you deserve to feel exactly how I felt. And it was just horrendously unhealthy on all ends.
Do you feel like after he started making the subtle changes about changing his schedule and his phone being present, do you really feel and believe that he has completely cut it off? Or did you still have a suspicion?
I definitely still had my feelings like there was a possibility that occasionally he was going to throw her a quick night to um, keep things going, because his business was floundering in a very scary place. And his business, aside from our relationship, was really all he had left, especially at his age. He did not have the energy or the capacity or the funds to start over in life. And so to lose his business would be to lose everything. And so that was part of the desperation piece that he tried to throw at me, is that, um, and I quote, I hope you're never in a state of desperation this bad where you have to make choices like that. What a beautifully worded excuse. Um, that it wasn't done out of emotion or sexuality. It was done out of desperation and survival, as he used to like to say. Everything he did was always a survival tactic. And he is a survivalist. And I'd like to preface that as well with any person that quantifies themselves as a survivalist, watch out. Watch out. Because survivalists will do anything on this planet to ensure their own safety and success. And it does not matter what that means in relation to any human being around them. The bounds of what they are willing to do to get to the next day, the limit does not exist.
Now, we're at the end of the relationship. Mm-hmm. But I gotta take you back, because at the beginning of the conversation, you said that he was not physically abusive, but he was mentally abusive, emotionally abusive, which we just touched on that, guys. So this is really for the people who don't get it, mm-hmm. who could be in it and you don't really know what's happening. Mm-hmm. They have the tendency to do everything in their verbal power to make you feel sorry for the bad decisions that they made.
Yes.
And that's the manipulation that pulls you in to make you feel like, well, if I leave now, I'm the bad person. Yep. I'm supposed to, this person is with me because we want to grow old together. And when I'm there, when things get hard, and then things get hard and I'm like, no, I'm out. What does that say about my character, my integrity, yep. me as a person? They're doing this because they know that they'll guilt trip you into staying.
Yeah.
Or time. Even worse, if you have left and you're still, for whatever reason, in communication with these homeboys or homegirls, they know that it only takes a little bit of time. And the longer that you communicate, the more they can wear you down and be like, you know what? You're right. I shouldn't have left because of this bad decision that you made. We should work on it together. It is not your responsibility to bear the burdens of someone else's bad decisions and then take that pressure and wait on yourself to make you feel like you're the bad person here. You're not.
Yep.
And that's what homeboy was doing to Mikayla with, and so well scripted.
Oh my God. And I'd like to say too, I attempted to leave him twice before this relationship permanently ended. I did leave twice. Both times they were prefaced as, we're going to take a break, or we're just going to take some time apart. And the magnetism that you possess with somebody that you're in a relationship with like that, and trauma bonding is very real. I hate that word gets thrown around so casually nowadays, because that is a very real phenomenon, and it is a very scary and dangerous thing. And when you are that deeply bonded with somebody, when you are soul tied to somebody like that, and then on top of it, you have an incredible physical life, you have an incredible intimate life, sexual life, because the man certainly was nothing to sneeze at in that department. And that is an incredibly powerful thing. And having that deep rooted part of yourself in them and in you makes walking away feel like it's truly physically impossible. You feel like you are going to die without them. And it's horrible. It's such a lonely, god awful, isolating place to be, that you truly feel if you leave them, you have nothing. Who are you? You know, you only like yourself. There's a song that I did utilize all the time, especially towards the end. Uh, it's by SZA. And oh my gosh, is it I Hate You? Right? I think. But it's just, I encourage everybody to listen to it because it is the most exceptional song for narcissistic abuse. Um, because one of the lines in it is only like myself when I'm with you. And that is so true because I didn't have the slightest idea who or what I would be without him. And he made it that way. And he did a really good job. He did a really good job. But the beautiful part of that now is that if there was ever anything that I could ever say to his face, um, it would be the little girl that you met, which I was. 26, you're a woman, yes, but I would say the woman or the little girl that you met, she's gone, long gone. And the woman that stands here now, you can't touch me ever. And you made it that way. So thank you.
Through the pain, through the discomfort, through the disbelief, through everything in that relationship, you use the pieces to build a stronger version of you.
Absolutely.
And sometimes I don't necessarily believe that you have to go through something to get stronger. I think that we end up going through things because we weren't meant to go through them in the first place, but because we're operating out of whatever insecurity or whatever we feel like we lack, we're operating from that low level space and we attract that to us, and then that becomes attractive to us. And then once we get sucked into it, I mean, they are master manipulators. It's like they got higher than a PhD in it. It's insane.
Yep.
It's insane. And for
Yep.
him to, like, his ability was so prestige to run down with you. I know I'm a bad person. I know I did bad things. I'm awful. I see what you have no idea who this person is. I don't blame you if you leave.
Yeah. And the crazy part is he would only take that level of accountability when he knew I had one step out the door. And then the talk of suicide would come, and the talk of I've got nothing left would come. And I can't be in the same city as you if I don't have you. Came that he was going to have to move because he couldn't be in the same city as me and not constantly drive by and try to come to my house and this, that, and the third. So he would always find a way with every breakup to take the stakes up a notch just enough to make me reconsider. Because I was petrified that if I left, something would happen. And my own family, my own mother would sit there and tell me, he's not going to do any such thing. And unfortunately, I have seen the results of suicide. I've seen the results of mental health tanking. And I just wasn't brave enough to take the risk. And sure enough, never happened because he's alive and thriving today. I know that for a fact.
Now, we touched on the mental emotional, but you mentioned that there was financial abuse. So I need you to break this down because we're here at the end of the relationship where he's making some really bad decisions just to keep his business afloat. You have your own house, you're established, you're good with or without him. How is he abusing you? Y'all have separate finances, separate car, like separate everything. How is he financially abusive?
So before, pretty much every time before we would take a lengthy vacation, I would hand him $400 or $500 to pay his trainers so that he wouldn't have to worry about it. Because his his funds were always lower than mine. I always had more consistent income than he had. So because I felt it was a supportive thing to do, it was an investment in his business, so that he could actually enjoy being on vacation, because that's all I wanted him to do was de-stress. I would hand him money, say, go pay your trainers. You don't even need to worry about it. When his car stopped functioning, I convinced my mother to, because she was getting ready to purchase a new car, I convinced her to hand her old vehicle over to him so he wouldn't have to pay for a new one. The gifts that I would give that man, I can't even tell you how many thousands of dollars I spent in the course of that relationship to give him the finest of the fine and the best of the best. The best watches, the best jewelry, the best clothing, just trips, very precious things that had to do with him and his children. Countless things. He definitely, in my entire life, probably second only to one other human being in my lifetime, I've spent the most money on. And again, these were things that I chose to do of my own accord, but he certainly took them happily, you know? And I paid for, I'd say it was probably about a 70-30 split, maybe 60-40 in terms of dates getting paid for, after like our 2-year mark. And he also was like a massive homebody as well. So trying to get him out of the house was like pulling teeth. Not for the first 2 years, but for the second 2. For the first 2 years, he kept up a really strong facade. Like there were bits and pieces that were bad, but they were never they were never that bad. But after 2 years, he really started to lift the veil, and all these things just kept going more and more downhill.
Girl, I done spent some money on some folks too, so you ain't alone. And I think the thing is, it's like we're trying to prove to them, I got you no matter what. You know, it's not about the money. I said, if it ain't about the money, it won't be up. But it, because of the type of caring and like just giving heart and person and character that we are, it's not a like it's almost like we want you to know that we're here with you to help you build. It's not about the money. But at the same time, when you are that type of person, you have to be able to be aware that who you're giving your money to is always being the receiver. Because I'm pretty sure it's different than with you and your best friend of 25 years. Like, you can throw her money any kind of way, and you know at some point ain't no point in even arguing about the money that she's going to give you, or gift she's going to give you, or trip she's going to pay for. There's always this balance. But people can abuse your kindness and your generosity, even though you're volunteering it. And I believe that people don't have the character to say, no, this is my business. Let me handle it. No, yep, come on with this for $500 so we can go on this trip that you paid for so I can relax. And I just wanted to point that out so that people are mindful that financial abuse isn't always about someone having control of your finances, but it's about someone who's never able to give back in reciprocity, because that's what relationships are supposed to be. They're supposed to be able to be reciprocated in any form or fashion. And if the person doesn't have it at the time, then I believe there should be a conversation like, hey, I don't have this, but I also want you to know that I respect everything that you worked hard for. I'm not just going to take what's yours unless we like legit business partners. We saw how that turned out, even if you are a legit business partner. So, girl, sheesh. So y'all work together. for 4 years.
Yes.
And you've been out of this relationship for 5 months now.
Yes.
What has the day you left up until now, what has your healing journey been like? And where do you see that it's going?
That's a big question. Well, after I permanently left and made it clear I was not coming back, it took a lot for me to stand that strong and say, no, I'm not, this is it. This is done. I can't take it anymore. Because the name calling and the things that he was willing to say and the vulnerabilities that he was willing to pick on and the insecurities that he was willing to just shred at with me had just gotten diabolical. Things that you couldn't even imagine that somebody that claims to love you would be willing to say. And, there was no stone left unturned in terms of ways that he would be willing to insult me and shred me down. And so after this last explosion, I said, you know what? Because he had 2 phones, so he had a work phone and a personal. Blocked his work phone. And of course, in the 2 weeks to follow after I left, he tried every tactic in the book to rope me back in. He went as far as FaceTiming me from a U-Haul and telling me that he was getting ready to go look at apartments in Buffalo and basically shut his business down because he just couldn't be in the same city as me. Yep. And yep. It was like the most extreme. Yeah, he was crying and had me convinced that he was going to move out of the city because he couldn't be in the same city as me.
And where he at now?
Here.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure the audience was keeping up with the words that you weren't
here.
Saying. Okay.
He never left. So stopped by my house twice when I was not here. One time to drop off a package of birthday gifts that I had given him and basically told me in the birthday card that I wrote him, he wrote on the back and basically said, you never meant anything you said. And I'm like, yeah, buddy, you got me. And then waited until about 3 or 4 days before my birthday and left a note on my car somewhere between 5 and 7 a.m. That I didn't even realize was on my windshield until I got to work. And I noticed there was this bright green slip on my windshield. I'm like, what the hell is this? So I pull it over and I flip it and it says, I will always love you. 3 days before my birthday. Very artfully planned. Very artfully planned. And thankfully I had a lot of support around me at that point. A lot of support. And because if I had been dealing with that instance by myself, honestly, I have no shame in saying I probably would have gone back because that was heavy. Because I knew in his mind he meant it, and after those 2 little pop bys, I got a camera on the front of my house because I said I'm not playing anymore. If he's going to continue to show up here, I don't know how unstable he is. We're not going to play these games. So my parents basically forced me to get a camera to put on the front of my house. When you come from a military family, there's no play about safety. And he never showed up here again after that, not to my knowledge. If he did, it must have been on foot because the cameras never caught it. So, what the amount of realization and the amount of grieving and the amount of just anger and sorrow that had to be let go of in the 5 months since I've left, which it's crazy that it's only been that long because it feels like it's been a lifetime. It really does. It feels like a year has gone by because I'm a completely different human being, completely different. And like I said, if he were to see me now, which who knows, there's a possibility that it could happen someday. We still live in the same city. I'm not frightened. I'm not nervous. Um, I would be more than proud to stand in front of him and say, you are the reason that I was able to take it this far. Thank you. You know, because he always wanted to say in his usual mentor fashion, he wanted our relationship to be something that I would come away with lessons. He wanted to be able to teach me something, right? And oh boy, did he ever. Boy, did he ever, because no man under any circumstance, the minute I see that flash in your eyes, it doesn't even need to necessarily be something that you say, because both the positive and the negative to having spent that amount of time with a narcissist is that you become so in tune with bodily and emotional and mental cues that other people just don't see. And it almost becomes like a sixth sense to human behavior. And after you're out of it, and after you've had the opportunity to really throw those rose colored glasses away, you start to see people in a whole new light, and you see them coming a mile away. And it makes it very easy to say, you are not welcome in my space because I see you for what you are right now. And I'm not even going to give you the opportunity to love bomb me or put a little shield over whatever you got going on to rope me in enough. You start to see these people for miles down the road. And it's definitely one way to ensure that it'll never happen to you again. Because I can promise you it'll never happen to me again, ever.
That's good, because there's so many times and so many stories that I've seen where someone, mostly women, I haven't navigated to the males yet, but mostly women go from one abusive relationship to another abusive relationship. And
Right.
I'm not a professional, but I think it has a lot to do with not taking the time to sit down and work on yourself
Mm-hmm.
and find out about you. Ask yourself, well, why was I in this abusive relationship in the first place? Why
Right.
did I stay? And get real transparent and vulnerable so that you can, like you said, release the anger, release the shame, the guilt, and everything, all the emotions that come with being abused and staying in a relationship that is deemed abusive. And so kudos to you for only having to experience once to be like, nah, you know what? Ain't nobody else about to catch me slipping.
Nope.
We ain't on ice over here.
Nope.
So big ups to you, Mikayla, on
Thank
that.
you.
My goodness. I
Thank
have
you.
my last question for you.
Mm-hmm.
After all that you've been through and who you are becoming, because I believe that everybody's on the journey of becoming, if we're
Absolutely.
trying to be better, who you are becoming now, what is confidence to you and how does it feel to you?
Mm. Confidence now is walking out into the world every day and saying, whoever that person is, whoever they are, that will be able to be graced with me, um, is exceptionally lucky in every facet of the word. And there is only one of me on this planet. There is only one of me. There is only one way that I can bring the energy that I bring to the table. I am a magnet for helping others, which is part of the reason I'm here. Um, I was put on this earth to help, aid, heal, care for others in a healthy way, in a healthy way. And I have learned the difference between what I have been doing my entire life and that. And so confidence now is looking in the mirror every day and saying, you are so deserving of that fairy tale that you've had from the time you were little, and you will get it. This is the first time in my life that I can honestly sit there and say, I don't feel hopeless. I don't feel lost. I'm rooted in the moment. I don't know what every single day is going to bring, but peace and an empty house is, well, I shouldn't say empty because I got my dog, right? But
Right. Don't leave Pup out.
peace. Oh, that's my best friend right there. But peace is addicting, man. Peace is the most beautiful drug on the planet. It really is. And it's scary because once you get solidified and connected to what peace actually means for you, whatever that looks like, you're not willing to let anybody disrupt that. Anyone. And that makes your pool of choosing a partner very small, as it should be. So what I would say to other women is that you are worthy of walking away. You are worth walking away for. Who you were as a child, who you were as a teenager, who you are now, those little girls along the way, you owe that to them. And that's like the only thing now that I actually get emotional over, is that I think about if I could really look my younger self in the face, my incredibly uncomfortable, poor self-esteem, totally unsure teenage self, and just say, honey, you're going to be a force to be reckoned with on this planet someday. And you are going to be a beacon of light for other children. And someday there will be a man that sees you for all that you are. And he will never want to let you go, ever. And he's out there. He is out there. And I'm ready for him, but not right now. I don't want him right now. I don't want him right now. I want my journey to continue transcending on my own, because it needs to. And I've never spent enough time to sit with just me. Just me. And I've never felt more sure of, you're a pretty cool chick to sit with.
That's the thing. That's it right there. Even before getting into any of this kind of foolishness that a lot of us find ourselves in, we don't take the time to sit with just us. One of my issues was constantly seeking validation from other
Yes.
people,
Yes.
and constantly wanting to be felt like I did it right. Yeah. Did I do it right? But we have to understand that, like you said, there's only one of us, and realizing how valuable that is, and realizing how valuable we are with what we were brought here to do. If we sit with ourselves, we have a better opportunity to figure out what our purpose is. And I think a lot of us don't know what our purpose is, and people up in their 40s and 50s and 60s and 70s don't know what their purpose is, because there's so many distractions in the forms of other people's opinions, other people's responsibilities, what they want of us, what they expect of us, what we think that they want, that we lose sight of just sitting still in peace and having that deep conversation with yourself and getting that deep connection with God, because it's in silence where you find your power. It's in silence where you find your purpose. It's in silence where you find your passion and what you're here for, who you're here for, and how you're going to make it all blow up.
And it's finding joy in the smallest of things as well. It's take that joy in getting your iced coffee on your way to work in the morning. Take that joy in, you know, snuffing on your puppy's head in the morning and saying, hey, I'll see you after work. Take joy in saying goodbye to your children in the morning and kissing them before you leave the house. Take joy in, you know, having that white wine with just you and your favorite show. And, you know, if you partake in other substances, do that too, you know, safely and responsibly. Listen, it's legal everywhere, y'all. We can talk about it. So if that's your thing, if journaling is your thing, if art is your thing, because I am a makeup artist and a singer as well. So I'm a big art gal all the way around. Find yourself in those artistic avenues. And this actually is the first time that I have really been all about diving into making really great artistic content again. And it makeup is therapy. I don't care what anyone says. It is. Makeup is therapy. And so whatever your that thing that just, if somebody could look at you and see sparkles all over your body, whatever it is, whatever makes you feel that way, do that as often as you can, and lose yourself in it, because every moment is fleeting. And don't time is the most precious currency we have. And don't ever let a person like that steal more from you, because time is the one thing you can't get back.
All facts. Well, shoot, Mikayla, I ain't got nothing much to say. I got one thing to say. I ain't gonna lie.
Yeah.
I got one thing to say, but you said it. But I just got to make sure that we end on this because it was so powerful. And I need to make sure the folks that needed to hear it didn't miss it.
Yes.
Mikayla said, look yourself in the mirror and tell yourself every day you are deserving.
Yes.
You are deserving. I don't care how old you are. I don't care what your status is. I don't care how you look. You are deserving. And you have to condition yourself to believe that you are deserving because you are. Mikayla.
Yes. Yes.
Y'all, I told you I was going to be good.
Oh my gosh.
I told y'all it was going to be good. Mikayla had me. Wait a minute now. What now? With the whoop-de-whoop.
Oh, you funny.
Shoot. But hey, this has been another amazing episode of the Confidence Way podcast. Y'all know what we're doing here, rising above insecurities, releasing the burdens of shame and guilt, and reviving our God-given power, purpose, and passion.
Yeah.
The confident way. Mikayla, thank you so much, sis.
You are so welcome.
Your strength, your courage, your vulnerability to share your story, because there's so many people. I don't know who's supposed to hear it, but I know they're going to get it. You know what I'm saying?
I hope so. And
at
oh my God, I'm so thrilled I could be here. Like I said, if it reaches just one right person in whatever state it is, baby girl, I hear you, I see you, I'm here. And even though I'm not in your state, I am connected to you in the way that the universe meant for us to be connected. So
amen, sis. Amen. Well, I ain't gonna hold y'all no longer. Thank y'all for tuning in. Mikayla, thank you for coming here. It was our privilege to share space, this energy, and your light with you. And as I always say, she gone. Confetti, 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 confetti.